I'm Keith Olbermann, and this is The Resistance. The suicide of a presidency occurred on Friday, February 17, 2017 at 4:32 p.m. Eastern Time. The fake news media, failing New York Times, CNN, NBC News, and many more, is not my enemy. It is the enemy of the American people. Sick. Donald Trump struck a fatal blow against his own presidency at that moment, with the use of those terms never heard before from an American president, not even from Richard Nixon, not ever. The presidency, of course, did not end with those words, but the inevitability that it will end later or sooner, the truth that his position as president is no longer tenable, became fixed the moment he pressed send and promulgated those evil words. And then he deleted them. But he deleted them not because they were the spasmodic outburst of a man with no self-control suddenly understanding that he had just finally thrown everything he had achieved out the window and he was seeking to destroy the record as Nixon destroyed his tapes. No, he deleted them because he had left out some of the specific targets he wanted to smear with words that even the evil founder of the Soviet state, Vladimir Lenin, waited until he was a month in power before using. 16 minutes later, the fake news media, failing New York Times, NBC News, ABC, CBS, CNN, is not my enemy. It is the enemy of the American people. There is no walking those words back. And as seen in the White House daily press briefing Tuesday afternoon, Trump isn't even going to try to do that because he's a fool. A man holding the office of the President of the United States using the language of the totalitarian Soviet states, the language used to mark groups of people for removal and death. A man holding the office of the President of the United States specifically attacking a group specifically protected by the Bill of Rights, the first amendments ever passed to the Constitution to which he swore allegiance, apparently falsely swore allegiance, but a month earlier. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Freedom of the press, sandwiched in among the freedom from a state religion, or against government abridgment of free speech, or of the right of assembly, or of petition against grievances. An attack on freedom of the press is an attack on all those other freedoms and all those Americans who exercise all those other freedoms. It is an attack on the Constitution itself. And that may not mean much to Trump or his wilder supporters, nor even to some of the men and women on the fringes of Congress to whom democracy has always been nothing more than a brand name. But the most tepid of Democrats must realize, or be made to realize, that everybody else in the president's party now has to decide how to answer these new questions. Speaker Ryan, do you agree? Are the New York Times, NBC News, ABC, CBS, CNN, and many more the enemy of the American people? Vice President Pence, a decade ago, you co-sponsored a bill to let reporters protect confidential sources. Do you agree with the president, or do you believe in freedom of the press? Majority Leader McConnell, can you defend the President of the United States calling Americans, holding American jobs in American-owned businesses, the enemies of the American people? Senator McCain, do you believe the President should be calling any American citizens a phrase made infamous by the communist Lenin? Secretary of Defense Mattis, when people say that freedom of speech and freedom of the press exist because of the United States military and that the military fights for free speech and for freedom of the press, what exactly does that mean? Judge Neil Gorsuch, do you believe in the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States? Republican candidate for the Senate, for the House, for the state legislature, for village mayor, for the school board. Not condemning Donald Trump means not condemning his belief that the news media is the enemy of the American people. Do you support Donald Trump, or do you think the news media is the enemy of the American people? These questions, and similarly blunt follow-ups, again and again and again. This is a door Trump has closed behind himself forever. He cannot reopen it and go back through, even if he were smart enough to try to do so. It is the suicide of a presidency, because whether all of those Republicans answer those questions now or next fall, they will answer them, and they will not be able to nuance their answers. And if the country still believes in democracy and not fascism, it will punish any politician who does not repudiate Trump's authoritarian madness. This does not mean his presidency ends today or tomorrow. Richard Nixon committed the suicide of a presidency in the late morning of Friday, June 23, 1972, when he ordered the FBI to discontinue its investigation of the Watergate break-in of just 6 days earlier. But the tape recording of his order did not become public until August 5, 1974. Nixon's presidency died of its 2-year-old self-inflicted wounds at noon on August 9, 1974, just as Trump's presidency will die of the wound he inflicted on it, and for exactly the same reason. Not because it was a crime against the United States of America and our Constitution, but because Republicans were going to have to answer questions about it in the midterm elections. As the Republicans of 1974 would have had no choice but to run against Richard Nixon, the Republicans of our day will have no choice but to run against Donald Trump. We've always been very celestial about our motives in this country, the Constitution, the flag, American exceptionalism. But ultimately, most of our internal decisions have come down to far less lofty issues. Often they've come right down into the gutters and the sewers of who is going to be reelected and who is not. And on Twitter, on February 17th, Donald Trump guaranteed that Republicans would have to try to get themselves reelected as Republicans, while a Republican president insisted the free press was an enemy of the American people. Those Republicans can't do that, so they will not try that. So Trump will have to go. And so his presidency is right now dying by his own hand. The only question is, how fast will it die? Resist. Peace.